Hello, everybody. I just want to have a little family talk on some things that I believe needs to be discussed among particularly so-called African American or black people. This is about our history and the context of the Bible, the scriptures. Some people will assume that I have a problem with other cultures. Some people will assume that I have a problem with white people simply because I am talking to black people. And quite honestly, I have a problem with that in itself because, I don't see anything wrong with talking to black people. This is an issue with this culture, in that we have these different cultures, and black people, so-called African Americans, are the only people on the earth today who have started a culture within another culture. Only people in history that I know of that ever had to do that. Even the Israelites, when they were in Egypt, they were still together. They kept all their traditions. So our situation is different. So yes, this is a family talk to black people, but that don't mean that I have any problem with white people or anybody else. I mean, I have white family members that I am crazy about. That is apples and oranges. This is something that black people need to hear. And when you hear people talking about black history or saying something specifically about race, I notice that a lot of Europeans get uncomfortable. And I think that's very, very selfish. Very selfish. Very selfish. It is. It's very selfish. This is something that we need to do. And so many times we have to do this in a form where other people can hear. It's the only way that we can come together right now. This is what we have to deal with right now. So this is a family talk. You can listen in, but if you get in your feelings, I don't know what to tell you. There's no apologies here. There's no apologies here because this is too serious for us. It might not be serious for you. You can down like it or whatever you want to do. All of that. I don't care. It's not to you. Okay. It's ain't nothing personal. It's all in love. But this is a conversation that is necessary for black people. All right. Now, moving forward, this is what I'm understanding about the scriptures. Period. What I understand about the scriptures, and this is true history that I've checked and it's documented. But what I understand is this: that the Israelites, the religion or worship was not just a religion. It was a tradition and a lifestyle that was part of their culture. Okay. We as Christians, specifically black Christians, we see black history and our history as carnal and not spiritual. But that was not the case with the Israelites, because their worship And like I said, their religion, which was not Judaism, the religion of Judaism did not exist in the Bible days. Of course, there was not even such a word as Judaism, but that was not the religion of the Israelites. They have modified it today, and called it Judaism, but it wasn't, and it wasn't Judaism, and that is not what the word Jew in the Bible stands for. The word Jew in the Bible is not short for Judaism. It is short for Judah. And if you look up the word Jew, the first time it was used in the Bible is in 2 Kings 16:6. And if you read that whole context, and this is something that we have to do, rather than just taking one verse, we understand the context. But when you read the context, you'll understand that when it says Jew, first of all, every instance of the word Jew is referring to the Hebrew word Yahudah, which means Judah, which is talking about a people. Judah was a southern region, was a southern kingdom of Israel. Israel was split into two kingdoms after King Solomon died. All this is in the Bible. Northern kingdom was called Israel, kept the name Israel, and later on was referred to as Samaria. But northern kingdom was called Israel. Southern kingdom was called Judah. Okay, so the word Jew in 2 Kings 16:6 was not talking about Judaism. When it says that they were at war with the Jews, that was talking about Judah. It was saying Israel, the northern kingdom, was at war with Judah, the southern kingdom. They had a war. Southern kingdom had a war with the northern kingdom, but it was all the Israelites. So it didn't have anything to do with religion, and I'm specifying that because nowadays that is what they try to say that Jew is short for. It's Judaism, but that is for the convenience of the modern day so-called Jews. They try to connect the word Jew with Judaism. In other words, all you have to do is convert to Judaism and you're a Jew. Well, they may do that nowadays, that's whatever, but that is not what the word Jew in the Bible stood for. So you cannot convert to a Jew in the Bible. See, and essentially that has been what has happened recently, and I will touch on that a little later concerning the today's Jews that live in the state of Israel. But regressing back to my subject, the biblical Hebrews, that their religion was part of their culture. So they didn't separate their history, their culture, or anything like that from their worship. It was all connected. So when we look at our history and see it as carnal, well, then that's not biblical. That's not scripture. All right. So we're going to touch on all of that today. And we owe it to our ancestors who had to bear the agonizing pain of having their children sold or taken from them, sold away, tearing the family apart, and also decapitating any oral identifying history that the parents had planned on imparting to those children. Listen, identity was completely stripped, mainly through the dividing of the families. now, mainly because of the internet, information is very hard to conceal these days. You know, the internet just makes the world smaller. We have access to internet we have access to information that can connect the dots again. We have no more excuses. No more. We owe it to our ancestors who didn't have a choice. Now we have a choice, but we're not digging into it. We owe it to them. We owe it to them. You know, their ancestors, like I said, you know, their worship enveloped the history and culture as well as honoring God and obeying His word. There was no separation like we have today. So we're going to dig into that. All right. Now there's a foundation I have to lay. I have to lay this because we're going to dig into this biblical history. All right. If you have any comments or whatever, you know, you're free to comment. But I'm going to tell you, if you don't agree with what I'm saying, that's fine. You know, you can. But if you're leaving some crazy stuff, it ain't changing my mind. You ain't changing nothing. You know, I'm not saying that I just know everything, but you know, if you leave some emotional stuff, I mean, I'll just, you know, I'm gonna keep on going. I might put a part 2, part 3, you know. So just because you don't like it, don't mean anything is gonna change. So I'm just throwing that out there. You know, do whatever you want to do with that. All right, but listen, this society has understood that the different ethnicities originated after the flood from Noah's 3 sons who were Ham, Shem, and Japheth. They say, the Bible says that, and the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. This is in Genesis 9, 18 and 19. Okay, verse 19 says, these are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. So the 3 sons of Noah were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And what has been taught to us was that Ham was black, and a lot of people have been taught that Ham was cursed black by God. Shem was Middle Eastern, I guess, and Japheth was white. So the 3 sons of Noah is where the different races came from. That's what we've been taught. But this is the context of that. Listen. Noah did not have 3 sons of 3 different races. Think about that. That's not in the Bible. Nowhere in the Bible did anybody have children of different races. You won't find that in the Bible. Nowhere. That don't even make sense. I don't know of anybody in history or scripture that has siblings or children by the parents had the parents were of the same ethnicity, but the children were different races. You know, my mother had 15 siblings. All of them were the same ethnicity. I don't have any Caucasian blood aunts or uncles. I don't know of anybody who have that story. You know, so that in itself don't make no sense at all, nor having 3 sons of 3 different races. All right? Now listen. Let's just take, in dealing with those 3 sons, let's talk about those 3 sons. This is the way I'm looking at this. We'll take a point of common agreement, a common denominator is what I'll call it. Everybody that I know of, every scholar, preacher, different theologian that I have heard discuss on this, everybody agrees. There's a conversation about what color Shem was. Some people say that he was Middle Eastern, but then on television here in America and, even in England or whatever, in movies like the Ten Commandments and that whole Bible series that came out, every Christian movie that comes out, all the Israelites are white. Because that gives you the idea that Shem was white. But then Japheth was supposed to be white. And then they say, there's a conversation on the other two brothers. But Ham, nobody else has owned Ham. Ham is agreed that he was black. He's called the father of the African people. Even on old maps, old ancient maps, you'll see that Africa is called Ham. And I put this information on my Facebook page called The World's Best Kept Secret. And it's a few pages called The World's Best Kept Secret. Mine is the one with the simple black picture with the words, small words, World's Best Kept Secret on it. But on old maps, Africa is called Ham. Even in the Bible, Psalms 105 and 106 calls Egypt, which is Africa, the land of Ham. Everybody that I have heard talk about this agrees that Ham was black. So we'll just use Ham as a common denominator, what everybody agrees on. Okay, Ham was black. That is true. Ham was black. Don't know about the other two, but we know that Ham was black. So we know that Ham was black. Well, if Ham was black, his brothers had to be black also. That's just that other conversation we had. I don't know of anybody, and you let me know anybody that you know of who have blood siblings, not adopted, not even step or half. I'm talking about blood siblings. Both parents were of the same ethnicity, and they have siblings of different ethnicities, different races. It don't even make sense. So if Ham was black or African, they say Ham was the father of the Africans. So that means Ham was African. Well, that means Shem was African and Japheth was African. And if Ham, Shem, and Japheth were African, they got whatever they got from their parents. That means Noah and his wife were African. That term African throws people off because they always think about that's just Ham. But if Ham was African, his brothers had to be African. This is foundational thinking. If we're going to talk about this, you have to understand this first. They were all Africans. Okay? That's first. They were all Africans. And albino is not a race. I have to make this clear. Okay, I do not subscribe to the whole Edomites being Europeans, that whole theory. I don't subscribe to it. Now, the black Hebrew Israelites, I give props to them for the history, and it has helped me a lot just on the history. But when they go there, they lose me because I don't agree with that theory that an albino that albinos are the father of the white people. A lot of people believe that. I don't, and I haven't seen any data that actually confirms that. It's just not there, because the bottom line is whether you don't have any melanin or not in your skin, which melanin doesn't come from the skin. The melanin comes from the pineal gland, which is in the back of the brain. Melanin is a whole other conversation. A lot of people think melanin is just in the skin and it's just about the color of your skin, but but there's a lot more to melanin, and we'll talk about that at another time. But just because the skin doesn't have melanin doesn't change a person's ethnicity. Okay, albino is not a race. And albinoism is a skin condition concerning the pigmentation. But you have all kind of races with albinoism. You know, you have Vietnamese albinos. You have all, you know, all of that. You know, that it just don't add up. It don't hold water. It don't hold water. Because a black albino still has black features. And a black albino's children still have a chance to be black. So just because a child is an albino doesn't mean that their children are even going to be albinos. There's no guarantee on that. You know, so I just don't buy the whole theory that albino is just the father of the white race. It just don't hold water. All right. Now we're going to talk about the Hebrews. Who were they? Now we're getting into we're getting into some meat. Okay, once you understand the foundation about everybody was African, even the Africa, the continent of Africa was broken up by Ham's 4 sons: Phut, Mizraim, Cush, and Canaan. Ham had 4 sons. Canaan was cursed. Canaan was cursed, but he wasn't cursed by God. Noah cursed Canaan. I do believe that should be pointed out. There is a difference between God speaking and a person speaking. Even if it's a man of God, there is a big difference between God speaking and a person speaking, because no person is God. It didn't say God, you know, said through Noah. It just says Noah cursed Canaan, which is whatever it is. My point is, God didn't curse Canaan. All right. I mean, I can take it further and even make the point that Noah had a hangover when he cursed Canaan. You know, I'm just putting everything in the context. Okay, but the point is, Canaan was cursed, and he wasn't cursed black. Nobody in Scripture was ever cursed black. Ham was not cursed. His son Canaan was cursed. So Phut, Mizraim, and Cush were not cursed. Only Canaan was cursed. Ham had sons. They were not cursed. All right. Now, Cush was Ethiopia. Like I said, Ham 4 sons made up Africa. Cush was Ethiopia. Phut was Libya, or is Libya. Mizraim is Egypt, or Kemet. The ancient Egyptians didn't call themselves Egyptians. They called themselves Kem, and they called their land Kemet, K-E-M, K-E-M-E-T. So they called themselves Kem, which means black. And they called their land Kemet. So that was Mizraim. And in Canaan is Israel. Israel is in the continent of Africa. The Middle East is not an 8th continent. There's still only 7 continents. I have all this stuff on my Facebook page where you can dig into it more. The world's best kept secret. But so I just wanted to make that clear, that Canaan is in the Canaan, which is Israel, has always been and still is in the continent of Africa. Okay, it's not Asia Minor. It's in Africa. Israel is sitting on the African tectonic plate. All right. So I just wanted to clarify that. So we have the Hebrews. Now, once you understand that they are all African, and the Hebrews never left the continent of Africa, once you understand that Israel is in Africa, the whole Old Testament was written in Africa. So they just went from Egypt to Canaan or Israel, but they was always in Africa. All of them was in Africa. Okay, this is no black superiority talk. I'm not into all that. I don't subscribe to the whole. Like I said, I don't subscribe to the Edomites being Europeans, and they say that because they point that out because they say that God hates Esau, and that is scriptural. Where it says God hates Esau, and so they try to make they want to say that when Esau was born, that Isaac's Isaac's reaction to how Esau looked and him being ruddy and hairy, that they try to say that he was a white child. And he might have been light-skinned. He could have been hairy. I cannot see him. The scripture don't say he was white, and I can't see him being white. He could have been light-skinned, and light-skinned is red, So anyway, I don't buy that whole theory. So that right there, it kicks the whole Esau being white. It kicks it out. I mean, all the scriptures, all of the prophecies about Esau and Edom and everything after that, it is what it is. But you can't say that he was white, because when he was born, he couldn't have been white. I don't care what the prophecies say after that. You can't jump from truth to truth. It's got to connect. You can comment whatever you want in my comments. That's fine. It's not going to change. It's got to connect. If he wasn't a white child, he couldn't have been a white adult, and he couldn't have white descendants. He had to have been born white. And I don't see where he was born white. I don't see it. So I haven't seen it in no history book. I haven't seen it anywhere where Esau was born white. So anyway, so now, but understanding who the Hebrews were. Well, okay, say that now. People might want to know where the white people come from. Well, I'm just going to say this before I get too far in here. I believe that the different ethnicities came from the Tower of Babel when God confused the languages. I notice after the Tower of Babel, you don't see too much of Japheth's descendants in the Bible, in the scriptures. They disappeared from scripture basically after the Tower of Babel. So I believe that when they migrated north and separated but the different ethnicities, I believe, was formed when God confused the languages. He didn't just confuse the languages, he actually created different races of people. This is my theory. None of us can prove any of these things, but this is my understanding. This is where I'm at. Okay, that's where the different races were created at the tower, because there's just too many races to come from just 3 sons. It ain't gonna work. Okay, that whole original thing where all the races came from Noah's 3 sons, that just didn't fly anyway. Despite it not making sense in context. But that's what I believe. So anyway, so that's that. But as far as the Hebrews, though, who were they? All right, this is who the Hebrews were. All right, first of all, the Hebrews were in Israel, okay, during the Bible days, and Israel was in control by the Romans. The Romans had colonized Israel, Jerusalem. Okay, like I explained earlier, the Israelites or the Jews were Africans. The Romans were Europeans, Caucasians. They had colonized. They had took over Israel, Jerusalem. Now the Messiah
to the Jews were their idea of a Messiah was someone to deliver them from the oppression of the Romans who had taken over their land. Any people who have been taken over by another people, there is oppression there. That's just always the way it's been in history. And they normally don't want the colonizing people there. So the context of that was that the Jews expected for the Messiah to deliver them from the Romans. I think it's in the book of Acts where they asked Jesus, was he's going to restore the power back to Israel? Something to that effect. I'm looking at up right now so that I'll get it actually get it correct. But nevertheless, the Israelites were in exile, and I'm getting a lot of this information from the book called The Roman-Jewish War by Flavius Josephus. Okay, he was a first century historian, and he was actually born like 30 years, I think, after Jesus died and was resurrected. But in the book of Acts, it says, it actually says in Acts 1 and 6, it says that they came unto him. Hold on. We have to get the context right. In the book of Acts, it says that when they came together, they asked of him, talking about Jesus, and they asked of Jesus, saying, Lord, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? He said unto them, it's not for you to know the times or the season which the Father has in his own power. But then he goes on to talk about, them receiving power. But they were wondering, they were talking about the out of the hand of the Romans, the kingdom to Israel. Jesus was on a spiritual note. Okay, but I'm just bringing this up to let you understand the context of what was going on back then. So that was what was happening. Jerusalem and Israel was colonized. It was controlled by the Romans. Well, what happened was the Jews revolted. I'm trying to make this kind of short as possible, but as clear as possible. The Jews revolted, and it caused a war. It started a war, and that war is called, in history, it is called the Jewish-Roman War. And so Flavius Josephus, who was a Jew, but he actually switched sides. He's known as a traitor, and he switched sides and he started fighting for the Romans. But he wrote a book because he was aware of both sides. So he left this book, and it's called the Jewish-Roman War, 66 through 70 A.D. But that war marked the end of the original Israelites as a nation. Okay, and the word nation in the Bible represented people. The way it went was, it was all about family. So the family, and then clusters of family made clans, and clusters of clans made tribes, and then tribes together made a nation. But it was all family. So anyway, now, but the Israelites were attacked by the Romans. The Romans came from Rome, Italy. Okay, by the time of that war, Israel had been split into two kingdoms. You had the northern kingdom, which kept the name Israel, or which later was known, like I said, as Samaria. They called it in the New Testament, but they were talking about the northern kingdom of Israel. And then the southern kingdom was Judah. The northern kingdom was two tribes. It was split up after Solomon died. The kingdom was split up after Solomon died. Northern kingdom was 10 tribes. Southern kingdom was 2 tribes, Benjamin and Judah. And so the northern kingdom got taken into captivity by the Assyrians in 722 BC, and that is in 2 Kings chapter 15 and chapter 16. And they were taken into captivity, never to be heard from again unto this day, and they are called the 10 lost tribes. That's what they are known as. So when you hear about the lost tribes, they are talking about those that were taken by the Assyrians in 722 BC. And that only left the kingdom of Judah, or 2 tribes. But that was Judah. So that's why Judah is mentioned so much, because they were the only people that were left. Okay, and so by the time this came in, the Romans came in, it was only Judah there. So the Romans came in from the northeast, and it make no sense, the prevailing thought by society and the television and all that. They'll make you think that the Jews fled into Turkey and all the northern countries, but they would have to go in the direction of the enemy, which was Rome. So how are you going to flee from your enemy going in the same direction that they're coming from? It just makes no sense. The escaping Jews, which were Africans, if you understand the context, understand that they were all Africans, not as in sons of Ham, but as in African people. But the Jews were Africans, and they fled on into Africa. And they just fled on into Africa, migrated on into Africa, and all through Africa, they just migrated. They were escaping starvation and death and slavery and all kind of stuff, from the Romans, and the indigenous Africans first sent word to the Portuguese that the children of the book, and I've heard some places that they said they called them the people of the book. Nevertheless, though, the indigenous Africans sent word to the Portuguese that the people of the book, or the children of the book, are in their land in much numbers, and they are cursed to be slaves. And cursed to be slaves came from Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, where when you read the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy, you'll see that it's all documented, and it's not just in Deuteronomy, but these are so profound in Deuteronomy, where the 1st through the 14th verses are blessings that God told through Moses. God spoke to the people saying that he would do for them if they did what he said. If they obeyed his word, he would bless them. I think it's in there even where he said, those that bless you, I'll bless them, and those that curse you, I'll curse them. And then 15th through the 68th verse are the curses that God said that he would put on his people if they didn't do what he said to do and appreciate him for all that he has done for them. And it is those verses that actually speak on the conditions that happen in America. And when you read those verses, the curses, and I'm just going to go through a few of them. It says, verse 16, cursed shalt thou be in the city, cursed shalt thou be in the field, cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. I'll just read a few of them. Verse 25, the Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them. Thou shalt be removed unto all the kingdoms of the earth. Going down a little bit more, it's verse 30, thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, thou shalt not gather the grapes thereof. Verse 32. Thy sons and thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. Verse 36. I'm just skipping around. The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone. And the other groups try to make it sound like Christians are serving wood. They specify that wood as in the cross, because usually the cross is wood, so they're trying to say that we are worshiping wood, and we're not worshiping wood. That's completely out of context. We're worshiping God. So anyway, that's just something. But it says in here, and there you shall serve other gods, wood and stone. Verse 37. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. Now it says, thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword. That word byword is actually meaning, if you look it up, it's meaning like a mockery, a word out of mockery, kind of like the word nigger, or just different words that different words out of mocking. That's what a byword is. So it says, and thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all the nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. Just going on down, there's so many in, verse 41, thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. Verse 43, the stranger that is within thee shall get up very high, and thou shalt come down very low. All these are curses because of disobedience. And he explains that. He says, verse 45, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes. His statutes are laws, that which he commanded thee. And they shall be a sign of that, they shall be upon thee for a sign and a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. Verse 47, because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart. Verse 48, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in all want and in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. The Lord shall bring, verse 49, the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far from the end of the earth, as swift as an eagle that flies, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Our people, when they first came over here, they didn't understand the English language. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. And it's just so many on here. But verse 68 is the last verse in there, and it says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. And it says, the Lord shall bring thee again into Egypt again with ships. Now, if you go to Egypt, you don't need to go in ships from Israel. That was back then. Now they have cut a canal through there, the Suez Canal, I believe it's called. That's a man-made canal. But back when these scriptures were written, that was one solid land going from Israel to Egypt. So you didn't need a ship to go from Israel to Egypt. And there is no people in history that was ever taken into slavery on ships except for the so-called African Americans or the Hebrews, the black people. That was the only time in history any people were ever taken into slavery on ships. And Egypt, if you look that up in the Bible, Egypt means the house of bondage. It's a term relating to the bondage that the Israelites went through in Egypt. And there's 10 times in the Bible that I found where Egypt is actually called the house of bondage. It's right there. It's right there, clear as day. Egypt, house of bondage, 10 times in the Bible. So that's not really talking about the country Egypt. It's talking about a condition of bondage that the God said He would send, that He would bring us into. He said, "By the way I spake unto you, that thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you." And that term, "no man shall buy you," is talking about the Levitical law about redemption from slavery, that your next of kin could purchase you out under certain conditions. You just have to get in there and research that. But he's saying in this situation here, nobody will be able to buy you out. And that's exactly what happened. That's just amazing. So it's just saying the indigenous Africans were saying that the children of the book are here in much numbers. They sent word to the Portuguese, and that's how the slave trade got started. And like they say, the rest is history. So that's connecting the dots as to how, who the children of the Israel were, who the Hebrews were, who they are today. And this information that I just gave you, I'm gonna give you a list of the books that I got that from. That's from the book called The Great Roman Jewish War, AD 66 through 70, by the ancient first century historian Flavius Josephus. Another book called The Truth About Black Biblical Hebrew Israelites by Ella J. Hewley. Another book called From Babylon to Timbuktu by Dr. Rudolph R. Windsor. Another book called The Call to the Hebrews by Mawuli, Mawuli, and then the Bible. And a quote by Dr. Marcus Garvey that says, "A people without the knowledge of their history is like a tree without roots." God bless you.